Okay, so Trump is back on in Colorado. Now he's off in Maine. This is a proxy attack by the state legislatures and state representatives that are attacking our very republic. And why? We want to talk about why they're doing this, some of the political gamesmanship behind this. We also want to talk about the left sending SWAT teams to homes of their political rivals. We're going to talk about politicians still frantically calling for war, some very dark predictions from a very well-connected news anchor, and all of this was predicted 62 years ago by Dwight Eisenhower, of all people. This is what we're going to talk about today. Let's go for it. Okay, welcome back to Continue Freedom. If this is your first time here, welcome. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments below. We are on X Locals, Rumble, and YouTube. Okay, so Donald Trump, he's off the ballot now, off in Maine, but he's back on in Colorado. So, I mean, pros, cons. Here's breaking from Daily Mail. Colorado Secretary of State says Trump is back on the ballot unless the Supreme Court rules he should be disqualified. Now, the Supreme Court, we know this is going to go to the Supreme Court, and they're not going to say that the third Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is applicable, because Section 3 of the 14th Amendment involves insurrection, and Trump has not been charged with insurrection. He has not been found guilty of insurrection, obviously, since he hasn't been charged with it. So we know that's not the case. But now Maine, and this is, let's see, what's her name? Sheena Bellows, who's the Secretary of State for Maine. And I'm going to play some of this clip from her interview for you. We're going to pay attention to some of the language in here because it is very, very telling.
It's a very detailed decision. We lay out why under Maine law, the Secretary of State has the authority, indeed the obligation, I'm duty bound to make this determination. I laid out that the record demonstrates that, in fact, the events of January 6, 2021, which were unprecedented and tragic, were an insurrection.
And okay, this is a key takeaway. This is the first point. She is saying that, according to me and my assessment, this was an insurrection. Therefore, we're going to apply Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. She does not get to unilaterally do that. Someone has to be found guilty of insurrection for it to be an insurrection. On top of that, we now know from all the tapes that we've seen that the people that were there were not this armed vigilante group. There were some people that were out of hand, yes, but that does not an insurrection make. And most of these people were just walking through the Capitol between the velvet ropes, in a very peaceful manner, taking selfies. They've had people that have shown up hours after the fact, got some selfies, left, were welcomed in, ushered in. I mean, everybody was gone at this point. Doors were wide open. And they walked in, snapped a couple of pictures, and now they're facing 18 months in federal prison. So we know that this was not an insurrection. We know that this is political prosecution. And this woman is saying, well, I believe that it's an insurrection. Therefore, I'm going to apply the insurrection carve-out in the 14th Amendment.
In the meaning of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And finally, in reviewing the facts presented, the evidence, the law, the history, we determined under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that Mr. Trump engaged in insurrection and therefore was disqualified.
Now, I have to say, not only is this an incredibly important decision, but it's a very brave decision.
The bravery, the great deal of bravery that it takes to go against Donald Trump. Oh, yes, she's so brave. Oh, wow. I mean, I'm sitting here clutching my pearls, and I'm aghast at how brave this woman is for going against someone that the left hates with just vengeance that we can't even comprehend. And yet, she's so brave.
Already come out attacking you. They have said that you are a virulent leftist and a hyper-partisan Biden-supporting Democrat.
Yep.
First and foremost, it's important to know my oath to the Constitution, my obligations to the Constitution and rule of law come before any other consideration.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
No other factors could weigh on that decision and did not. I'm duty-bound to both hold a hearing and make a ruling. And under the law, there's a very compressed timeline. In evaluating this, I came to the conclusion that I could not, unfortunately or fortunately, wait for the United States Supreme Court to make a decision
There you go. That's it right there. I couldn't wait for the process to play out for, these pesky branches of government that just take too long to get the end result that I want. So I'm going to unilaterally take the 45th president of the United States and the guy who's the current front runner against the people that I support, i.e. the Democrat Party, and just strip him off the ballot. I've got to do it. I can't wait for this pesky Supreme Court who takes far too long to get the things to get the result that I want. So I'm just going to do it unilaterally. This is not how this is supposed to work. I'm all about states' rights, but states have to adhere to the Constitution. They have to adhere to the rule of law. And when you have vigilante states, that is problematic across the board for all of us. And so Colorado tried it, and Colorado has now failed, but they're trying it in Maine. Here's the problem. We look at when this happens. We're going to see how long. We have to keep our finger on the pulse of this situation, because how long this takes is going to determine how long it's going to take for Michigan or some other state to take Donald Trump off the ballot in October of next year. This is the thing. They're showing that they are fearless in doing this. They are obviously getting us pretty angry and getting us hot and bothered. We want to adhere to the constitutional and our legal process, to the rule of law, and for things to work themselves out as they are supposed to in our legal system. But they're saying we don't really care about that. We're going to jump the gun. We're going to push this forward because we are duty bound by our overlords inside of the Democrat Party to make that happen. I mean, this is absolutely unprecedented behavior on the part of these state representatives. It's deeply, deeply troubling. And for all the people out there that are Donald Trump haters, and I know I've got plenty that watch these, I get your comments all the time. I got some on my last video that, oh, yes, he is an insurrectionist. So I'm going to remind you for some of the key points. It doesn't matter what you feel. There's a well-known commentator out there who says facts don't care about your feelings. And it is very true that it doesn't matter how you feel. You may have just a horrific view of Donald Trump, and he's the worst thing that's ever happened to this country. And that's fine. You can have that opinion. But there are zero charges against him for insurrection. Therefore, you cannot say that he is an insurrectionist. I mean, you can say it, but you're full of crap. Like, that's not an argument that can be made. And therefore, the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment cannot be applied. If you believe that January 6th was an insurrection, then I ask you to virulently call on the President of the United States now, Joe Biden, to seek out and find all those people who were part of the May 29th, 2020 insurrection, where they firebombed the White House, which actually happened. They firebombed the White House. Here's some photos for those of you that may not know, or maybe you didn't catch that. But here's what was happening outside the White House when they moved President Trump into the bunker underneath the White House. Where's your outrage? They attempting to break into the White House and strip the president from his chambers, the leader of the free world. Where's your outrage? Is that not an insurrection? 50 police officers were wounded by Molotov cocktails, and they were stashing cars with incendiary devices all around the White House. Where's your outrage? Is it because of the reason that they were rioting and looting? Because if you think that, okay, some people going into the Capitol building, what, time and place matters, whether you're going to overthrow the government and it's the president and it's somebody that you hate, that's acceptable. But when it's Congress and it's around election time, that makes it a completely different scenario. Time and place of attempting to overthrow the government matters more to you, and the target of those political actions, because it was an election, which, yes, it was stolen, but an election that you liked the outcome of it. Therefore, anybody who was going against that or who had opposing views to you, those are insurrectionists. But you support people rioting, and because of George Floyd, the guy who died of a drug overdose. You're okay with that, and you hate Donald Trump. Therefore, it's not insurrection. We can't prosecute these people. We can't go after them. Oh no, heavens forbid. Then you are a hypocrite. These and if we're in a situation now where politicians have zero fear of leveraging the but the using the levers of government, in particular law enforcement, to go after their political opponents. And in this case, Marjorie Taylor Green, lover or hater, I'm not a fan of Marjorie Taylor Green necessarily, but she said both my daughter's houses just got swatted today. Big thanks to the police who responded. We appreciate you and support you. Whoever is doing this, you are going to get caught, and it won't be funny to you anymore. So what is happening, this has become a common thing, people will find out where their political opponents live. They will call the police and say that they are harboring young people, or that they are, human trafficking, or that there's drugs there, or that they heard of, violent threats being made, and SWAT shows up. And SWAT comes in, wrecks the house, searches the house. They go through the whole process, and they try to basically disrupt people's lives using the SWAT team. And the SWAT team is going to do what, they don't know the situation. They don't know that this is a hoax. But it's happened to people like Tim Pool, who's a commentator. It's happened to countless people, and I think Andy No maybe even. But either way, there's been a lot of people who have been swatted because people found out where they lived, and they make false threats. And then the police response to that should be those people being imprisoned. That you should be found guilty of falsifying an official report, of there's a multitude of things that you can be found guilty of, but the problem is nothing ever happens. They don't do anything to them. Why? Because they are on the preferred side of the political aisle, because they are a protected class of people. So they can misuse our police departments all they want, and nothing's ever going to happen. And, on top of all of that, if that's not great enough, here we have this gentleman, Lindsey Graham. And I'm just going to play this short clip for you.
I've been saying for 6 months now, hit Iran. They have oil fields out in the open. They have the Revolutionary Guard headquarters you can see from space. Blow it off the map.
There you go.
Been saying for 6 months.
There you go. He's been saying for 6 months to blow him off the map. This is the wet dream that Lindsey Graham has every night. Every night he goes to bed just salivating about war. And why? Why would, you would think that a guy who's been a senator for 21 years, he's been embroiled in this political system, that he would be, we just expend so much of our blood and treasure on war. Well, he doesn't have anything to lose. He doesn't have any kids that we know of. His kids aren't going to go off and die and have their limbs blown off when we start a ruckus with Iran, one of the more powerful militaries in the Middle East. He doesn't have anything to lose. This guy is a psychopath. He is a psychotic individual. And he's evil. Sorry. At least he is being influenced by evil. Let's put it that way. He has zero skin in the game. All he has are more political donations that are going to come from Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed, all those people that keep him in office, that keep this sycophant in office. That's where he stands to gain. He's out there standing on his stump saying, let's go to war, bomb Iran. Same thing that Nikki Haley's doing. If you're still watching all these presidential candidates, there's only two now of consequence, if you ask me. Ron DeSantis is done. Unfortunately, his campaign is done. It was run terribly. There's Nikki Haley, who is just this guy wearing a dress and high heels. She's a Lindsey Graham acolyte. She wants war just like Lindsey Graham wants war. And then there's Vivek Ramaswamy. And these are the ones outside of Donald Trump, which, good heavens. But a lot of this was predicted. When we talk about the weaponization of our federal government, we talk about the weaponization of, during COVID, of scientific research. The sciences were corrupted by politics. We've had the military corrupted by politics. And we have this entire just monstrous machine of the military-industrial complex that is driving so much of our political discourse. It's driving so many people to call for war. We have to go to war. We have to spend money in Ukraine. This guy has been out here stumping for Ukraine money since the whole thing began. He was, again, it's another thing that gives him wet dreams at night, is Ukraine bombs blowing up in Ukraine, and they're American bombs made by the companies that put him into office. This is what they dream about. They love this. and we were warned about it. But it's in an inconsequential speech, something that probably a lot of people watched back in 1961, but not a lot of people pay attention to it anymore. And it's a blast from the past. Maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't, but I'm going to play a video for you from Dwight Eisenhower. And if you don't know Dwight Eisenhower, maybe you've been living under a rock, but I'm going to go ahead and assume everybody does. He was the Supreme Allied Commander during World War II, during the tail end of World War II. And this guy rose through the ranks very quickly, and he was the big dog in charge. And he went on to serve 2 terms as President of the United States. He understood. He had been through World War I, which he didn't actually go overseas during World War I, but he was in the military during World War I. He was involved in World War II, Korea, 3 massive conflicts. And as he was closing out his presidency, he gave some warnings, and he gave some very keen insight into the things that we would be facing as a republic, as a country. And I want to play some of these things for you now. Let's go ahead and start with the first one.
Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration. To meet it successfully, there is call for not so much the emotional and transitory sacrifices of crisis, but rather those which enable us to carry forward steadily, surely, and without complaint, the burdens of a prolonged and complex struggle with liberty, the stake.
Does this sound familiar to anyone? A long, drawn-out struggle against those who oppose liberty and our way of life. And in this instance, he's talking about communism, but we're not facing the exact same thing today, but it's similar. Communism is definitely at the core of what we are facing today. It's the Marxist way of thinking. And communism is the great evil in today's struggle of righteousness versus ungodly righteousness. These are an atheistic This is an atheistic belief system, which you can be an atheist if you want to. But when you take God out of things and you take the morality out of things, you have this Marxist ideology that is infecting our country. And so the things that he was facing then, we have to be aware of the nefarious nature of those who are opposing us, the people who would leverage the state against their political enemies, the people who would leverage science against its people in order to get to some, what they believe is some grander end. COVID, i.e. COVID, vaccine mandates, making people ingest things that they know are going to harm them, that they know are going to cause long-term health problems, that they know are going to help contribute to depopulation because that is their religion. It is a religion void of God or morals. It is a purely selfish way of approaching the world. That is what the Klaus Schwabs of the world believe. That is what the Lindsey Grahams of the world believe. That's what the establishment people believe, who think that this world needs to shrink by 80% so that we can all live in peace and harmony under their thumb. He warned it. He specifically warned us of this. The next point that I'm going to bring up, and this is probably one of the most important sections of this video, and there's a great deal that's I highly recommend anybody go and watch it. But let's listen to this last little section here.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
So the point he's making here is, and what he had made prior to this, was we had never seen on an industrial scale a collection of industries, entire sectors of the economy that were solely meant for generating weapons of war. like actual weapons of war, tanks, planes, nuclear weapons, bombs, bullets, all of these things. And the vast amount of money that was being pumped into it was unlike anything that our country had ever seen. So it was, on one hand, a great mobilization of industry in order to prepare us for a world war, which you can argue whether we should or should not have been involved in that war. Obviously, once Pearl Harbor happens, we had to get involved in World War II. But it generated this massive industry, and this massive industry that was getting millions and millions, the equivalent today, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars pumped into it. Rich people who now benefit from conflict. And we have to be wary. He's telling us to be wary of an industry that can leverage its government-funded enterprise to enrich themselves at the expense of the people, which is what they do. And it can initiate conflict for which their products are the perceived solution. So they can start a conflict, and they need more weapons for it. We can leverage the federal government and our foreign policy to drive countries into war that then feeds that war machine. Where do you think the $200 billion going to Ukraine is being pumped? It's being pumped into the military-industrial complex. And he says that we have to be an informed and alert people who understand what's going on around us. We, the people, have to be informed. We have to understand what is happening. The days of us not being involved in politics are gone. I'm sorry. I hate to break that to people, but we have to say we are in new territory now. We are not in the days of everybody's got a house and a car, and this isn't Mayberry anymore. We've lived in this weird facade, or behind this facade of a country, while nefarious things are going on unbeknownst to us. But because of the internet, because of social media, because of undercover reporting and it being readily available to us, because of independent journalism, we are able to find out what is actually going on. The veil has been lifted. And now that the veil has been lifted, we cannot go back and we can't put the veil back down again. You have to be involved. You have to be knowledgeable. You have to look at these things, even though it stresses you out. We have to. It is our duty as citizens to do that. It is our duty as free Americans in this great republic to be aware of what's going on and vote accordingly. We have to understand when we're being deceived. But so few of us understand. So many people want that veil to go back down. It's too stressful for them. Well, we have to alter our pain tolerance. That's something that I always talked about in the military. When I was in the military, it was an exercise in pain tolerance on a regular basis. And you build your pain tolerance so that you can emotionally, mentally, physically handle the stresses of combat, the stresses of war. And we now have to do that for the good of our republic. We have to increase our pain tolerance. And we have to watch and listen and not take everything at face value. I say this to everybody. Question everything you see in mainstream media. Question everything that you see in alternative media, like myself. Question me. I'm perfectly happy with being questioned. And if I'm wrong, I will happily admit it. But we are far beyond the days of living just our peaceful life and not worrying about it anymore. As adults, we have to be aware of what's going on around us. We have to be aware of this larger plan. And the reason that it is being accelerated, in my opinion, is because more people are becoming aware. Because here I am talking about it just only for, a very short period of time, and I'm capturing the attention of a lot of people. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. The last section here, and I'm going to switch to it, and let me pause it here, is, let me go ahead and play it, and this is about another 1 minute segment.
Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor tinkering in his shop has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
Need I say more than COVID? It is amazing how history repeats itself. And it is amazing how people have these insights. You know, this was 60 years ago. And yet he understood. He saw the dangers of this. And it's not necessarily even prophetic. It's just something he was able to see after working with these organizations, seeing the money being pumped into them, and having the realization that, you know what, when federal dollars are influencing research, then that research is going to be manipulated to ensure the continued reception of, or continued receipt of, those federal dollars. And now we have the federal government leveraging science, as Dr. Fauci would like to tell us. You know, he's the embodiment of science as he sees it. And he is out there pushing drugs for pharmaceutical companies that get a large portion of their money from the federal government. So it's this self-licking ice cream cone. This is why I'm a small government guy. This is why I believe that the free market should be developing these things, and the federal government should have little to no involvement in it. People think that the federal government is offering some safeguard by being part of the pharmaceutical industry or the war machine or whatever. But these people are not safeguards. They are leveraging the system for their own gain, for their own power, to facilitate their own corruption. And General Eisenhower, then President Eisenhower, knew that in 1961. And what has happened since 1961? Everything that I just played you. The military-industrial complex is out of control. Our scientific research is out of control. We are now in a situation where we don't know who to trust, what to trust when it comes to the things that we're putting in our bodies. We have to, as I said before, and I'll say this in closing, we have to be aware of everything that is being told to us. Skepticism has always been a part of being an American citizen. We have to be skeptical of the federal government. We left a monarchy, and we started this republic, and this constitutional representative republic that has generated the most vast amount of wealth, the most drastic increase in the standard of living and technology and all of these things ever since our Constitution was signed. The world went in a unanimously positive direction, but with all that money came a great deal of greed, a great deal of corruption, and people that want to remove the freedoms. It's just a good versus evil. This is simply a good versus evil fight. And if you are on the side of free will, of God, of the Constitution, then you are on the right side. If you are on the side of Marxism, of control, of people like Klaus Schwab, if I could find that video. Here it is. Klaus Schwab.
Doit accepter une
In this new world, we must
transparence, je
accept
dirais même
transparency,
une
and I'll even say
transparence
total
totale.
transparency.
Tout va être
Everything is
transparent.
going to be transparent.
Et il faut s'habituer, il faut se comporter.
And you have to behave
Ça
accordingly.
devient, comment
becomes,
dirais-je,
how should I
intégré dans
put it,
votre
integrated into
personnalité.
your
Mais si on n'a
personality.
rien à cacher,
But if you have nothing to hide,
il ne faut pas avoir
then you
peur.
shouldn't be afraid. We're going to know everything. We're going to control everything. We're going to see everything. But if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to be afraid of? These are the nefarious people that we're up against. It's graver. Each day I see that it's graver than I ever possibly imagined. And we just have to vote accordingly. We have to call out the BS where we see it. We have to call out the corruption where we see it. And we have to put the right people into office. And if any of you all out there are some great upstanding American citizens, you're worried about getting into the political fray, but you love God, you love your Constitution, you love your country, and you want to provide something great for the future, not enrich yourself, but to do something great for our country, then maybe you should be running for office. Thank you all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments below. We are on X, Locals, Rumble, and YouTube, and we'll see you all in the next video.